I feel like if you're even a little bit of a horror movie fan, you've at least heard of The Conjuring. It's become so popular in the last 10 years that it's become its own series with spin-offs and even short films. I mean, in total, the series has made $2.2 billion at the box office, which has blown my mind. Let's do it. There are 9 movies this time and 5 short films, which I had no idea existed. We're gonna go in order of release and look how each one stands on its own and furthers the story. Let's start with the first Conjuring movie. Now, I've already seen this numerous times before this video, and I think it's actually really good. You open on the Warrens talking to a group of people who have had experiences with a doll, which they think is haunted, named Annabelle. Now, if you're familiar with these real-life stories of the Warrens, you know that Annabelle is a big part of their lives, as well as these movies. It has a good opening and not only introduces our leads, Ed and Lorraine Warren, but also shows us their profession of paranormal investigators. It also shows us what the series is capable of when it's actually trying. James Wan's directing here is really something special, and we see his potential if he continues directing these down the road. As a plot, though, I think it works pretty well. A family tormented by a ghost woman named Bathsheba, who grows in power as the family settles in the house. It's a very simple plot, but because of that, it works as not only a standalone movie, but a start to a series. I really like it. 8 out of 10. I don't really have any problems with it. I think I've just seen it a lot to this point where it's not really scary or shocking to me. I think it's great, though. Let's see if it continues. I think Annabelle could be a really good movie if things lined up correctly. I don't necessarily think it's the worst thing I've ever seen. It's not imaginary, it's not Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey, and it's not Exorcist Believer. It's actually got a pretty good first act with some fun scares and good moments, but once it hits that 40-minute mark, it takes a turn. I can definitely tell that this movie was heavily inspired by Rosemary's Baby. I mean, the 2 leads have the same names of the 2 main actors in the movie, but my biggest problem with it is those last 40 minutes and how goofy things end up being. If you're going to be inspired by Rosemary's Baby, please do something different with it. The biggest difference story-wise between this and Rosemary's Baby is the doll. I mean, I get it, Rosemary's Baby is great, but I don't want the same movie over and over again. Expand on it, build it up. There's nothing wrong with being inspired, but it seems like these people watched one movie and they're like, I want to do that. It didn't do all that much except blatantly show us how Annabelle came to be, how she got in the hands of the Warrens. That's it. That's really it. At the end of the day, it's competently made, but it's not really anything special. I'm gonna give it a 4 out of 10, way under the first one. Continuing where the first left off, this is how you follow up a movie like The Conjuring. This one establishes almost an anthology, with the Warrens traveling to England to investigate a little girl who was possessed. Different family, but a pretty similar story at the end of the day. Because of the bigger budget, we see James Wan taking the filmmaking up to an 11. Visual-wise, it looks insane. I'm glad it was able to expand on the first one, even if I still think the first one's better. Look, I like a lot of what this one's doing, but dude, this thing is over 2 hours long, which normally wouldn't be a problem, but you feel that runtime, especially for something like this. And especially during those nun scenes, who we will get to in time. Overall, I think it comes out pretty good. There's some fun set pieces and filmmaking, but ultimately doesn't do anything groundbreaking or shocking to the same level that the first one did. All it really does is set up the nun Valak, who just shows up when she feels like it. It's much slower and more chill than the first, which some people might enjoy, but for what it is, I think it's 10 to 15 minutes too long. It's a 7 out of 10, I'm putting it in between the other two. Wait, hold up. This one's not bad. While the first one may be annoying and boring, this one is actually pretty fun. It's a little goofy and there's some problems I have with it, but it's not bad. One thing that's pretty consistent about these first few movies is the camera work on some of these is so fun. The camera goes through windows, spins, contorts, flies. It's so cool to watch. But the story here is actually pretty solid too. It follows a group of orphans and a nun that move in with the husband and wife who recently lost their daughter. The opening scene shows that the husband created Annabelle, and I'll be honest, You really did not need that opening scene. It just serves to show that these movies have zero subtlety. They have to show everything that happens. It's a beautifully shot scene, but it really doesn't add anything that we're not told later. You know what's scarier than a creepy Annabelle doll? The unknown. This movie reminded me a bit of the second Ouija movie. Maybe because Lulu Wilson was in both, but there's a stark difference between these two, and that's the direction of the scares. Annabelle Creation is loud, a bit obnoxious at times, and Ouija is quiet and patient. There's a scene in the Ouija movie where a character gets the sheets pulled off of her by something unknown. On the floor are the sheets, looking like something's underneath. She pulls the sheets off and there's nothing. We then cut away before we're even able to process it. Annabelle Creation does the exact opposite. We are shown the demon a little too much, and there's just no room for interpretation. I mean, Ouija's not a perfect movie either, but I think there's a distinct difference between how these two movies do their scares. Ouija toys with your expectations, and this honestly just doesn't. As far as pushing the story forward, we see that the nun in this movie has a picture of Valak, and I guess we'll just get there. 6 out of 10, I'm putting it under Conjuring 2. Now, in 2017, to commemorate the release of Annabelle Creation, the company behind it ran a contest where contestants would submit short films based on this universe, and the top 5 would be posted on the company's YouTube channel and be added to the Conjuring universe. I'm a bit skeptical to add these because they're not made by the team behind the movies, but we'll see if I go through including these because, I mean, they might be fun to talk about. Let's just do a lightning round. This one is the first one, but for a 2-minute short film, I mean, it's pretty solid. Some good atmosphere and makeup, but there's just really not much more to say. Better than Annabelle. Besides the mention of the Warrens, these really don't connect all that much. Some fun ideas, but ultimately ends up not really hitting for me. I like the idea of one unbroken take, but I'm having trouble with this, I'll be real. 5 out of 10. This one sucks. Nothing happened for 2 minutes and I feel like I just wasted my time. There's nothing to this one. It's poorly shot and I think they just lost the audio or something. It just has absolutely nothing to offer. Bottom of the list. No setup, no build-up, another stinker for me. This is the final one, and it's just awful. I don't understand how some of these won, I'll be honest. Some of these have no story, no sauce, nothing to offer. They're just somehow boring for 2 minutes each. These were just interesting to look at because either they had barely anyone submit to the contest, or most of them were just awful. A lot of it isn't even the filmmaker's fault. A lot of it is the decision to make them so short. I don't get it, but let's move on to what these movies were building up to. The movie opens with a recap of what we've seen with the other movies, mainly The Conjuring 2 and the nun's presence in that film before flashing back to 1952. No matter how bad this movie ends up being, it has some really good production design, which actually kind of makes sense. So, this is a prequel to all of these movies, with the intro showing us Valak's power, and then the movie makes an interesting choice, and that is to barely establish the nun outside of the scares. There are some good scares and moments of genuinely well-crafted horror, but other than those moments, we get what? Mediocre story and character development? One thing that's fascinating to me is the casting choice of Thaisa Farmiga as Sister Irene. She's the sister of the woman who played Lorraine in the Conjuring movies. She does a fine job, nothing groundbreaking for this type of performance, but never really goes beyond what I expect. Something I just noticed is the truck that pulls away has a Valak license plate. So at least some people behind this tried, but that's really all there is for positives other than those, which I just listed. This movie gets boring. As a movie in this series, it's not very good, especially since this is what the series has built up to at this point. Compared to other nun-type movies I've seen this year, this one just doesn't do anything for me. They barely establish what the nun is besides a spirit who wants to tear apart the convent from the inside. It just doesn't make much sense and relies so much on the fantastical elements. And at the end, we see that Lorraine helped Frenchie from this movie and saw the nun when she touched him, which is a callback to the first movie, and it just doesn't work. Where Ed says that she saw something that took a big piece of her, and that is revealed to be the nun. That's stupid. Still, it's far from the worst thing I've seen, but it's also far from the best I've seen. 4 out of 10, I guess it's a little better than Annabelle. An actually pretty solid opener. The editing here is engaging and slick until the 3-minute mark where it becomes more standard. It just starts to lose me after that, unfortunately. The story is that there is a ghost of a woman called La Llorona who kidnaps children to kill them. That's about it. I've seen this story done better in Bly Manor, but you know what, whatever. This is the feature directorial debut of Michael Chaves, who is later going to become a mainstay in the series, but previously we had James Wan, David F. Sandberg, and others. So a new voice in the series is appreciated, or at least would be if it wasn't so bland. I feel like a lot of modern horror movies are kind of made in a factory, one that produces the most safe and boring horror movies I've ever seen. These films make a killing at the box office because you know exactly what you're going to get. I could go on about these types of movies and how I think the best ones are the ones where you don't know what's going to happen. But I'm going to save that for time's sake. But La Llorona is boring. It tries to do some interesting things, but for the most part, it just plays it safe. It sucks because this could be really good. These films always either discuss faith and the power of it, but never go beyond that. They never go far enough into the psychology and the complexities of it to engage me. These movies are the opposite of The Exorcist for me, which was a deep study of the power of faith and what that does to someone in the church. And The Exorcist is great, but I wish this at least went far enough with those ideas to grab me. It's just a surface level analysis which just saddens me. But enough of that. How does it relate to the rest of them? Well, the same priest in Annabelle is in this one, and he doesn't really do anything outside of 1 or 2 scenes. There's just nothing to this movie. It doesn't relate to the others in the series. It just doesn't do anything super interesting. It kind of just exists. It's another 4 out of 10, and I'm putting it above Annabelle and below the Nun. This one takes place right after the interview with the people who own Annabelle at the beginning of the first Conjuring film. It starts with Ed and Lorraine taking the Annabelle doll away from them, and then scary things happen. Ooh. What I'm surprised about is how much the Warrens play into this one. There's actually something here that connects these movies other than The Nun, and it's actually kind of sick. But anyway, this is also the directorial debut of Gary Dauberman, writer of the It movies and the first 2 Annabelle movies. He is the master of mid-horror films. I haven't seen Salem's Lot yet, but if I have, I'll put my review on screen. But I do actually appreciate the exploration of how being the Warrens' kid affects someone. And I like a lot of other aspects. I think the characters are kind of fun, but ultimately it is pretty standard, with some really slow pacing, unfortunately. I don't mind a movie being slow, but when it doesn't need to be slow, then what are we doing? I get when something like Perfect Days or Drive My Car is slow. They're meant to be. But when the stupid haunted doll movie is 1 hour and 45 minutes, it just feels strange. But I guess my main problem with it is that it is just kind of standard. And I'm running out of ways to say that, but it is true. Also, I guess this is the last time I'll actually be able to say this, but the Annabelle doll they used in these films isn't that scary. It comes off as trying too hard when the original doll is actually creepier. But I guess that's just my opinion. Overall, it's just another fine movie. It's got its moments, but it's another in the list of fine movies. It's a 6 out of 10. I'm putting it below the second Annabelle. And that's the final Annabelle movie. I think it's wild how the first one is actually pretty bad, but the second and third are actually kind of good. That's what happens when you switch directors. You get 3 drastically different films that feel like different attempts for this type of movie. They're nothing amazing, but the Annabelle series has taught me that these can be solid when the director is actually passionate about the genre. And now it's time for the climax. This one takes place in the 80s and starts with the exorcism of a young boy. I'm not sure what it is with these films, but they love casting previous cast members of Mike Flanagan stuff. First was Lulu Wilson, then McKenna Grace, now Julian Hilliard. All of them were in The Haunting of Hill House, and they were great there and in these films too. Now, this may be my last time to talk about it, but it is insane how people think that Ed and Lorraine Warren were actually good people. Multiple sources state that they weren't, but people excuse it all because of these movies that portray them as good people. It's untrue, but these versions of Ed and Lorraine ignore those claims and pretend they didn't happen. Which I get. I don't want to see Ed in these movies, so I guess that makes sense, but let's get back to the film. The Conjuring 3 feels over-dramatized. It's a departure from the grounded nature of the first 2. But even in those movies, there were still some elements that went more out there. James Wan stepped down from the director role and Michael Chaves stepped up. There are always these shots where the camera zooms through the house, effortlessly and freely shows us the lives of these characters, how they interact with one another. But when this film tries it, it feels forced. Like Chaves wanted to replicate the charm that the first 2 had. And to a certain extent, he did, but I'd love to see something new from the series. The initial attack scene is really good and shows off the lighting and editing really well, but it kind of ends after that. I will say that there are a few scenes here and there that are really good, the flashback scene in particular, but I mean, overall, the movie's just fine. It doesn't have the same level of detail or care that the first 2 did, but it is still decent, it's entertaining, but I want more from these movies than just scary ghost. I want more character stuff, and these movies don't usually give them to me. And it's sad. I'm not sure why, but this one feels held back by something. The courtroom drama angle is pretty interesting, but can easily be screwed up. I mean, look at Joker 2. But yeah, it's just fine. Nothing special. Definitely a step down from the first 2 in the series, but a step up from other films in this universe. It's a 5 out of 10. This was the first of the films that I saw in theaters, and boy was it rough. I went with a few friends and I had these AMC coupons that would get me a free ticket. We left and quickly realized that we were going to be late. Really late. So we zoomed down the highway, and when we got to the theater, there was a huge line for tickets. We didn't buy them beforehand. We got to the front and I was told my coupons wouldn't work and I had to pay like $14. On top of that, the only seats were in the very front row. The Nun II somehow sold out. So some of the shots looked like this to me and my neck hurt for a while after that. But I was able to get these great pictures from our seats, and it was probably the worst experience in the theater I've ever had, and it didn't help that I didn't think the movie was very good. I hated this film afterwards. But I decided that I didn't give it a fair chance, and I wanted to for this video. So I rewatched it on my laptop in the dark, and it was still pretty bad. It's not offensively bad like I originally thought. It's just boring, and I didn't care about anything that went on, and kind of got nothing out of it. Something about a demon of Saint Carta, if that means anything. It's at least well shot, but the script is so uninteresting that I can't help but dislike it. There's just nothing to talk about except for my original theater experience. It's just one of those cases where a theater experience enhances or de-enhances a film, but the film itself is pretty bad. Probably one of the worst on the list. There's bad acting and jump scares everywhere. The last act has explosions and stunts. It is the biggest film in the series by far. It's also really loud. The only thing remotely good is the cinematography and the newsstand scene, but that's it. The whole thing with the goat is just so funny. How it pushes the story further is exactly how a Marvel movie pushes its story further, with an after-credit scene with characters we already know, teasing the next movie in the series. You see my problem with this? 3 out of 10. It's above the 2 short films, but this movie just sucks. I think I was justified in hating it originally, but the Nun films feel like the biggest movies in the series, and yet they're the worst. Looking at the credits, they could have been great if they tried something different, but I guess I digress. It is now time for the finale, at least until the next one gets made. We'll see when that happens, but I'm actually sort of excited. This video has taken me a year to make, so if you've made it this far, please consider subscribing. I've wasted away so much time on this video. Please, I beg. But anyway, I'm actually excited. The trailer looks pretty promising, and I'm actually on board with them finishing the main Conjuring movies. There might be spin-offs later, sure, but this might be the end of it all. At least the marketing is making sure we know that. So I drove to the theater and prepared for the final Conjuring movie, and I'm torn. As a film, I have a few problems with it, but as a conclusion, it is pretty solid. It's shot super well with really good lighting and camera work. It follows Ed and Lorraine as they come face to face with the first demon they've ever come across. Now their daughter is older and the main target for this demon. This is based on the real case of the Smurl family, the last case Ed and Lorraine did. My only problem with this story is that it feels like 2 separate stories, Judy getting married and the Smurl family just being haunted. They only really come together an hour and a half into this 2-hour and 15-minute movie, but it wraps up Ed and Lorraine's story really well and shows their struggles and battles within themselves and each other. It's solid enough, but doesn't really blow me away. I think this movie would be scarier if the music and sound effects would just shut the hell up. It's the same problem I had with the It movies, but whatever. Before I went and saw this, I watched And Then We Danced Before, which is a small independent Georgian film that is so subtle and soft-spoken, contrasted against this loud, overt American horror film. It was a wild tonal and cultural shift that I was not ready for. Otherwise, it's fine. 6 out of 10, above Annabelle Creation, below the second movie. And that's the list. The Conjuring films are the most popular horror series in terms of box office numbers. Now, does that make any movie in the series good? No. I feel like these movies are the most popular because they're the easiest to watch. They don't make you think, they don't challenge you, they're junk food horror, and it's hard for me to get behind them. I hate being so negative, so let's talk about the positives. I think in the series' early days, the goal was to expand these real-life stories into films. The Warrens were real people. Awful people, but the movies are good. And I can see why people gravitate towards them. But as I watch them, I realize they're just kind of not for me. At least the newer ones aren't. They help people get into this genre, but they don't necessarily expand your knowledge of horror the deeper you go. They're good beginner horror films, which is fine. I just hope that someday I can do a ranking video about a series I actually enjoy for the most part. But that's gonna do it for me. Let me know your ranking of these films. I'd love to read them. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.